everyone, welcome back to the Pocket Nutritionist. My name is Katie and today I'm going to be talking to you about water. I am so glad that I have finally pulled the pin on this video. The reason I'm making this video is mainly for all of my clients who I know I've spoken to about water. There's always some miscommunication or confusion around this matter, and this is going to put all of those questions and confusions to bed once and for all. For those of you who are new to the channel, please like this video and subscribe to the channel because I share recipes that help you lose weight and have more energy than you know what to do with. Okay, so I'm actually exceptionally thirsty right now. I've been purposefully waiting for my devices to charge so that I could record this video and show you exactly how I would like you to start drinking water. I'll show you first, and then I will go about explaining the reasons why I prefer to do things this way and the reasons it makes the most sense for me to do it this way, plus some benefits for you to start drinking water in a better, more structured way so that you can get wonderful results as well. So here I have got in this jug exactly 500 mils of pure, clear, filtered, clean water. I'll go into some detail in this video about the reasons why it's important to filter your water. But just so you know, this is pure, clean, filtered water. 500 mils, and I'm going to pour it into this tumbler. I recommend drinking out of a tumbler or something maybe with slightly wider mouth than this so that you can drink correctly. So let me do the demo for you first. Can you see that? It's all gone. Oh, a couple of little drops. All in one go. So when I say to you, all in one go, that is what I mean. Let's explain more. Okay, so one of the things that I hear about a lot with clients is that they're constantly running off to the toilet when they start drinking more water. I've had this as well myself, and the way that I just showed you how to drink water is a solution for that. So I recommend not to sip your water. Do not sip. No sipping, avoid sipping. The reason for this is that when we want to rehydrate the body really well, we want to create what we call a full flush. So you know the toilet, you've got your half flush and your full flush. Sometimes you need the half flush, but sometimes you need the full flush. And we want to create a full flush so that we're eliminating toxins, we're pushing the water in, we're creating that pressure gradient so that the water penetrates into your cells more effectively. We want to have it all in one go with the volume and the pressure to help flush the system. I think that's pretty straightforward. For example, if you have got a lot of debris build up on your car, and you come along with a hose and you just spurt it for a couple of seconds and that's it, is that going to clean the car? Of course it's not going to clean the car. It's still got stuff all over it. So you need to get the volume and pressure of that water all over the car in mass volume to actually clean the car. That's part of what hydration is all about. Hydration is about cleansing and clearing toxins and metabolic buildup out of the system through the liver, kidneys, the skin, the lungs, getting that water through. It's so important. After all, we're made mostly of water. So we need to have that fresh, clear, clean, regular water going in with volume and pressure. Another tip for drinking water is just in relation to your head position when you're drinking water. So when you're drinking from a tumbler like this, it's quite easy to keep your head straight when you're drinking. If you're using a bottle, however, sometimes you may find yourself having to tip your head back a little bit like this. Now what can happen is, this is just a very subtle thing, but interesting nonetheless. If you tip your head back like this, then that may be placing a little bit of pressure just on the spinal cord, which then will affect the whole nervous system and the preparation of the body to receive water. So there are a lot of inbuilt systems that we're not even aware of with the body about how it receives and processes information, either chemically, mechanically, and so on. So if you think about in nature, if you're drinking water, you'd be going down to lift it up to your head like this. So your neck would be long and your head wouldn't be back like this. And the signal from the head down to the rest of the body is signaling, oh, prepare for water, here we go. And then the body will receive it. So we want to emulate as close to as possible how we would naturally drink water. So when you're using your tumbler and you're drinking, keep your head as straight as possible. So, some strategies around how to actually consume the correct amount of water throughout the day. Of course, everyone has slightly different requirements when it comes to water intake. For example, if you're a labouring person that works out in the sun all day in the heat, your requirement for water is going to be much higher than someone just pottering around the house or not doing as much physical activity in not a very hot environment. So that just sort of makes sense. Obviously also exercise demands, health demands, your size and structure are going to dictate how much water you may need from day to day. I think for most people, unless you're out doing a lot of physical activity in the heat, a general recommendation that I would make is between 2 to 3 litres of water per day, at least to get started. I know now I drink a little bit more than that, especially because I'm also exercising most days, but I've just found that I need a little bit more now, and I'll also have a little bit more overnight as well. But 2 to 3 litres I think is a really good starting point, I think, for most people. A lot of people I speak to aren't even having that much per day. Some people I speak to have no idea how much they're actually drinking. They've never tracked it before. So I think that that's a really good starting point for most people. Often when I ask clients, how much water are you drinking? They say, I'm drinking heaps of water. That's a very subjective measure. I like to actually know how much you're actually drinking in mils and litres. This is really important because you might perceive that you're drinking a lot of water, but to you, a lot of water might be 2 litres a day, but your requirement might be more around 3 to 4 litres. So what we need to do is actually start measuring how much water you're actually drinking. And a wonderful way to do that is to get a water bottle that you know how much it takes, so whether it's a litre, whether it's 750 mils, whatever it is, and start tracking it. Every time you've gone through one of those, write it down in a tracker. You can use tracking apps. I'm about to put a water tracker into my app, just so that you've got a way of actually measuring it so that you can review at the end of your day, how much water did I actually drink? And that way, then you've got a bit more of an idea about where your intake is actually at. I certainly did not know how much water I was drinking until I started drinking water this way. And that's when I realized how dehydrated I actually was. I wasn't drinking the amount of water I thought I was. I thought I was drinking a lot because I kept sipping it all day, so I thought I was constantly getting hydrated. But the actual volume of what I was taking in was nowhere near what I really needed to be at. So ensure that you're actually measuring. Measuring is so key, especially for this. So measure how much water you're having as you're getting started so that you can really identify whether or not you're getting enough in during the day. So here's the strategy that I think is very useful for most people. When you wake up in the morning, on rising, the very first thing that you put in your body is going to be water. So have a water bottle sitting next to your bedside table or on your bedside table. You can have that there for overnight if you need a little bit of water. Obviously have as much as you can. Drink volume so that you're not constantly getting up and going back to the toilet. You could actually need to have 2 water bottles sitting there. So most nights I'll actually now have 2 water bottles sitting there in case I run out. That means I don't need to go out to the tap and fill up the water bottle, etc. So have those water bottles sitting there. If you prefer to drink out of a glass and you find it easier, which is definitely what I recommend, then have the glass sitting there too so that you can fill up the glass and then drink your water out of the glass. So first thing on rising, I say between 400 to 500 mils all at once if you can. I realise that a lot of people struggle to have this much water all at once. And I've heard people say that they feel exceptionally full and they feel bloated. And unfortunately, that is part of the process for a lot of people going through this. Because the body's become so dry, the aquaporins and the signalling for the cells is such that it's not allowing a lot of water out of the cells because the body's dehydrated. It's trying to hold on to water. But just like you might find with a dry new sponge, when you first get it, it's very dry and it's difficult to sort of mop up any water inside the sponge. But as the sponge starts to take on more water, it's a lot easier for that sponge to then pick up water and release water, and it becomes softer and more supple. So the same thing applies with our bodies. If you've been dehydrated for a long time, then the cells might be struggling a little bit to regulate what's going on with the water. It's not used to having that much water there. And so at the start, you may need to start a little bit on the lower end. Even some people can only tolerate 250 to 300 mils to begin with. So just start where you can. You're better off doing something than nothing. So that's what I usually suggest. And then as the days go by and you get a little bit more hydrated, then you can start to lift that up to more around the 400 to 500 mil mark. There may also be some challenges in actually doing the swallowing action. So just keep practicing that as best as you can and just focus on getting these amounts in throughout the day. If you can't do all at once, what I would suggest is doing the 200 mils that you can, just take a little breather, let that sink in, and then go again in that same sitting within those couple of minutes. Because at least then you're getting the volume in, even though you may not be getting it in all at one go, you're getting at least a fair whack of water in all at once. But do not leave your water until you've finished that quantity. So set yourself the goal, I'm doing 400 mils in this couple of minutes, and get all of that in. Another sign of dehydration is acid reflux, believe it or not. So part of the issue with acid reflux, a lot of people think that it's because there's too much stomach acid in the system and then it rises up and it causes a lot of pain and suffering. Well, actually, sometimes it's due to the fact that the hydrochloric acid level is too low due to lack of fluids, which can be created by having dehydration if you haven't been drinking enough water. So water plays a big role in digestion because we have to make digestive juices in order to digest all of the food down. Those digestive juices can't be juices if there's no water. So you need to have the water in order to adequately digest your food. So for this reason, the other quantities of water can come in around 20 to 30 minutes before each main meal. So for example, if you've woken up and you've had your 500 mils on rising, you may have your breakfast in another 2 hours time. If that's the case, then half an hour before your breakfast, have another 500 mils of water, just like I showed you before. Then that way, the water has a chance to get into the system, go through, the digestive juices can start to form, and then you'll be prepared to take on that food. So 20 to 30 minutes before breakfast, before lunch, and before dinner is a really good strategy. It's easy to remember. It's also helpful because if you're about to go on break at work and you don't want to have to race off to the toilet outside of that break, then you'll be prepared for when you actually go on your break. You can also go to the toilet at the same time, and that will set you up for a really good strategy as a baseline level of hydration for the day. That is equivalent to 2 litres a day if you just do those 4 times a day all at once. Another question that sometimes comes up is whether or not to drink water throughout a meal. So there's no real straight answer. I mean, what I would suggest is if you drink your water before you eat, with the way that I've suggested, about 20 to 30 minutes before you have the meal, you won't need to drink as much water throughout the meal. If you need a little sip here or you get something caught in your throat, of course, have some water. But you wouldn't want to be drinking vast quantities of water during your meal, simply because it will dilute your stomach acids and make them not as effective in breaking down the food. So having a little sip is not going to be problematic, but having massive quantities of water throughout the meal or massive quantities of liquid throughout the meal may affect your digestion. So that's why I suggest doing the water before the meal. Just feel it out for yourself. Obviously, a lot of people are used to drinking during their meal, used to having a glass of wine or whatever it is that they're having. I just make that suggestion because if we're talking about optimal health and optimal digestion, that's what we want to try to achieve here. So that's why I make that suggestion. Another strategy that could work for you is if you're a little bit forgetful, which can actually be linked in part with dehydration. Obviously, the brain needs a lot of water, and if we don't have enough water to clean the nervous system and clean the brain, then it can get a little bit murky and maybe not respond quite how we want it to. So if you are one of those people that tends to be a little bit forgetful and just forgets to drink water or gets tied up in what you're doing and then forgets, then setting alarms every day just around your meal times, that 20 to 30 minutes beforehand, set that alarm, drop everything that you're doing and just have your water. Now I know that can be really tricky for a lot of people to drop everything that they're doing, especially when they're in flow with what they're trying to achieve with their work or their study or whatever it is that they're doing. But it is also exceptionally important, if you're wanting to be healthier, to ensure that you get this water in. Snooze it if you have to, give yourself 10 minutes, and then when the alarm goes off again, have your water. It's just a wonderful way to remind yourself, oh my goodness, I've just lost 3 hours of time there. I was so engrossed in what I was doing. Now it's time to have some water and look after myself. Okay, as far as exercise goes, if you're exercising regularly or you're out in the sun, you need to then add more water in those 500 ml lots as best you can, as per your requirement. So I've found that I definitely will add at least an extra litre if I'm doing a training session. Sometimes during my training session, I do like to have a little sip here and there, which I don't think is an issue. But overall, at least before I go, I have a lot of water. I'll then do my training session, I might have a few sips, and then after I train, the very first thing I will do is have plenty more water. So I'll have another 500 mils after that session, just to replenish the system, and usually I'll have a meal as well after that, so then I'll be eating, so that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Some other signs of dehydration include the following: dry eyes, dry mouth, cognitive dysfunction, memory issues, headaches and migraines, depression, anxiety, neck and shoulder pain, backache, spine degeneration, pins and needles in the arm, digestive problems, leg and knee pain, poor circulation, plantar fasciitis, neuropathies, dry skin, heart irregularities and high blood pressure, and urinary tract issues. I bet you didn't think there was this much to know about drinking water. Well, I certainly didn't. But now I have become known around my gym as the quote-unquote water Nazi. I don't like that. I don't like that term, water police or whatever it is. It's just so critical that you get this foundation correct. Nothing in the system can work. You can do all the food till the cows come home, but if you don't have this water right, the cells will not respond the way you want them to. It's as simple as that. And of course, we all have a little bit of biodiversity in our genes, but we're all human beings at the end of the day, and human beings need water. So we must put that in as the first point of call for any success in changing the body's biochemistry, in changing your weight, in changing your body composition, in changing your health. This is the #1 priority, and it will really transform your health.